Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the FilmSpeak channel, or welcome to, if this is your first time, for our Mandalorian recap and review show. We're going to be breaking down all the episodes in season 2, usually the morning after they premiere, because I mean, like, it just premieres so fucking late. So we're not that dedicated, but we are dedicated. So we're going to bring you these this coverage week to week. If this is your first time checking out the FilmSpeak channel, hey. My name is Griffin. I'm an LA-based entertainment journalist and film critic, and here at FilmSpeak, we like to say that the conversation continues after the credits, and so if you want to be a part of that conversation, you're definitely in the right place. Consider subscribing to the channel for more insight, analysis, and interviews behind your favorite pieces of entertainment. Today, we're going to be talking about Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, which I believe is Chapter 9, technically, and I don't know if it actually has a title, but we're going to be talking about it, and I am not here alone. Each week I will be joined by Elliott from Movie Files. Elliott, how's it going, man?
What's up, man? Happy Mandalorian Friday. Happy Star Wars Friday, man. I believe it's Chapter 9, The Marshal. I believe is
that's what it's called.
Okay, so far. Yeah. So I'm excited, man. We had a great time talking Lovecraft, and definitely a switch of tone jumping into the Star Wars universe, man. But I'm so happy to break it down with you every week, man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because season 1 of The Mandalorian was, it was a breakout season. It was a phenomenon. Yep. Everyone loved it. First live action Star Wars show, huge. Yeah. For me, I was like incredibly underwhelmed by it as a whole. I actually really didn't even care for it all that much. I was like, oh, okay, this is like kind of fun, light entertainment. It just kind of feels like they're playing around with expensive toys, but they didn't really do anything interesting. And, the episodic nature of it, I didn't really like. And then also the fact that it felt like they were wandering around aimlessly. Mm-hmm. I was just like, why am I invested? Like, why should I care about what's going on? It's not even like all that fun. That being said, there were some standout episodes that were incredible, before we go into that, I just love the way that it was framed and shot. It's a beautiful looking series for sure. But like the Bryce Dallas Howard episode, I really liked. The first Rick Famuyiwa episode, I really liked. And then obviously Taika Waititi coming in at the end, giving us an incredible finale. And so I was looking forward to season 2, but I wasn't, I think similar to you, I wasn't jumping out of my chair, like losing my mind about it. Yeah. Mainly because I think I've been burnt out on Star Wars just a little too much over the years. But season 2, episode 1 is a completely different story. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Elliott, what was sort of your overall thoughts on season 1 as a whole?
The opposite of you, man. And I definitely understand the sentiments you're coming from as far as the negativity. Yeah, it is a different, whenever you have different directors Dave Filoni directed a couple episodes, Deborah Chow, which had 2 of my favorite episodes, and like you mentioned, Taika Waititi's finale. I enjoy kind of the nature of like Saturday morning cartoons where we have our Mandalorian, we have our hero, he's on these missions every single week, saving people, starting off as an outcast and bringing the people together and opening up his emotions to this child and being the hero's journey, man, this kind of Western vibe to it. So I enjoyed the idea of, like you mentioned, Bryce Dallas Howard, Rick Famuyiwa, all these different creators who have either never directed something or have a small independent thing and getting their chance to shine. I think this is what the future of Star Wars is TV priority first and getting some rock stars from that, and then maybe seeing them transition into the big screen, a la Deborah Chow with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And we're getting, Peyton Reed this season. We're getting, all these great creators. So I just love it, like you mentioned, your thing on like the playing with expensive toys. I love that we get these creative minds get into this universe and having their take on this lore that we all grew up and love. And yes, it's a tough time to be a Star Wars fan, but I think The Mandalorian is definitely riding the wave as far as giving us enough appreciation of what came before it, but also pushing the narrative forward in a certain way. Sure. We're going to get some legendary characters that we'll talk about in this episode, but I really enjoyed the Emmy winning, season 1, man. It was a lot of fun stuff. It had some flaws, but I had a good time with season 1.
Yeah, for sure. So we get here to season 2, episode 1, and we're we have no idea what we're going to expect. I think like a day before it premiered or whatever, we hear that it's going to be around like 50 some minutes. And to me, that got me really excited because one of the big issues I had with season 1 was the really brief episodes. It just felt like, by the time episode 1 ended, while it was like cool and it was fun, I was like, oh, that was it. Really? Okay. All right. I that was just
27
really
minutes, 32 minutes. It's just like,
I know it's just like all this. I know all this hype is building up, and then it's just like, less than a 30-minute long episode. And I'm like, all right, I'm really underwhelmed here.
Yeah.
Completely different story here with the season 2 premiere. I absolutely loved this episode, and I think that what Jon Favreau, who directed this episode, by the way, and you can tell in several shots. I loved seeing him behind the camera for this. But the thing I loved about it was they utilized the length beautifully. They knew that they probably had a little bit more money this time around, so they could do longer episodes, but they knew they had close to an hour long time, so they could take their time. They could still do the Western sort of thing that they were doing in the first season. Although I'd argue that they doubled down on that even more so in this. But they were able to let character moments play out, let us get to know this village that Mando eventually comes across, and what's sort of happening in the wake of or in the aftermath of the Empire collapsing, and all of that going on. I just thought was so interesting, and then on top of that, you get the exciting moments, and so to me, this felt like a true hour-long episode of a Western. I mean, granted, it's a space Western, but it really just sort of was ticking all the boxes, and it was a lot of fun.
I think that's the word of the day for this episode. It was a lot of fun, right? And at the same time, having fun, but also one of the conversations that a lot of us are having with the Star Wars universe, and particularly with the movie universe, is we're in this galaxy, and yet we're just on the same planet, same characters, and the world is getting smaller, smaller. But from the very get-go, I mean, we enter this urban-like city, we enter this arena of this battle royale, classic Mandalorian style. It's a setup. They want his Beskar armor because the Mandalorians are very rare, so that is a very hot commodity to come across the Mandalorian. So just from the opening gates, hearing Letwood's score, and then going, we do go to Tatooine, which is the hub of the
right. Yeah, it's like we compliment it for opening up the world, and then they go back to Tatooine.
Go back to what we know, which again goes back to the love of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, where they're still pointing nods to the familiarity of the Star Wars universe, but then introducing us to this small town, this village that I think comes from the old Knights of Republic legends, and that's something that a lot of people have been down upon Star Wars. Is you have all this stuff to your disposal, video games, novels, books. Why not use it? And now they're starting to implement some of that stuff that I haven't read in the books, but hearing from it, getting this legend and seeing this town that was once populated with happiness and people flourishing, but then the miners come in and take over the town, and that's where we meet Timothy Olyphant as Cobb. So you mentioned it, man. You get the character moments. We get a backstory from that character, which if it was last year, we would have probably never got that. Right? It was so quick.
And I think that was one of my favorite parts of the entire episode because that was the first time that we've seen. I mean, you have the books, you have the Aftermath trilogy, which if you are a fan of Star Wars and the novels, obviously I'm sure many of you have read that. Cobb Vanth is actually a character from those novels, so they brought him into the show, which I thought was really, really cool. But basically those books deal with the fallout of the Empire collapsing and how something like the First Order could come to power and rise to power. It's at the end of Return of the Jedi, things seemed like they were all really happy and
we're
whatnot.
Celebrating. We took out the Empire.
But then obviously, as we see in this episode, that really wasn't the case in some areas. With the governing body, whether it was good or bad, whatever, with the governing body dismantled, these villages had to it just left the entire galaxy in a state of flux, and so these gangs would come in and take over these villages and start. It truly became the Wild West, or I guess what you could say post World War II Germany or something like that. Since there's a lot of World War II allegories to Star Wars and stuff like that, and so I liked that we got that look. It was expanding the mythology, expanding the lore in a really interesting, personal way, and they showed it through the lens of Timothy Olyphant, which was, he was so good in this episode. I loved him.
Yes.
And he excels in these. I mean, obviously because he was in Justified and everything.
Justified, yeah.
But he excels in these just really cool, calm, collected Western sort of roles. So. Yeah. And I think that's probably what also added to just sort of the overall feel of everything. But yeah, I don't know. I really loved that they went there, and they took the time to explain what happened.
And it's so, to me, the promise of a live action Star Wars television show was to explore the bellies of the underground, the streets of the, what we don't get in the movies. We're out of space. We're fighting, intergalactic battles. We're having lightsaber battles, and it's epic. It's awesome. It's a theatrical experience. But then the promise of the show was, okay, like you just mentioned, what are the aftermath of smaller towns that are still being bullied and being, ran by gangster and a mafia of the Star Wars universe. So I love that we see that in this episode, and I hope we get more of that in the season. And Timothy Olyphant, man, his swagger in this episode, whether it be Justified. He's the deputy, the marshal in the newest season of Fargo as Deathy. So he definitely has that, he is the sheriff. And every time we see him, he just has that presence to him. And I really hope we see him make a return later in the season, because I really love that character.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing that we know. Excuse me. About the Mandalorian is that he'll go on these sort of little one-off adventures. Yeah. He'll come across these people, and it's hey, if I ever need you again, whatever. And then
here's
they sort
of
yeah, exactly. And so I have a feeling that we will probably see Timothy Olyphant again in some capacity. Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, just for the fact that he's just a really cool character, and I liked the dynamic between him, and Mando for sure. The other thing that I really liked about, I know we're sort of jumping all over the place here, but I did just sort of going through with this. The other thing that I really liked was, when Mando first arrived to town, the way that he sort of was walking in, came in on that speeder with Ludwig's score with the guitar going, it felt like it was ripped straight out of a spaghetti western, straight out of one of those Sergio Leone, Clint Eastwood films. I was like, oh man, they're really, really going here with that, with the Western sort of thing. And then on top of that, it's sort of he stumbles upon this village who has their own problems, but he's clearly got his own mission. He's trying to find the other Mandalorian that can help him, point him in the right direction of where to take the child to get trained and all that stuff. And all this is happening after he gets the information, he gets the tip that there is a Mandalorian in Mos Pelgo, and which, by the way, that opening is so good, and we'll get back to that in a second. But the second he arrives here, it kind of takes on the life of just this really cool spaghetti western adventure, which it was nice to see them kind of go there.
It's so funny to see Jon Favreau come back to this Western, and he's highly inspired by great, like you just mentioned, a lot of great Westerns, but also cowboys and aliens versus aliens. Yeah, right? He gets that second chance to kind of have that cowboy alien story. So I think he's definitely kind of making up for that movie. That was a mixed bag, to say the least. But no, you definitely get that influence of, again, this outlaw, this bounty hunter, as we saw last season, coming to the town. These people are struggling, need help, and Mando's there to save them. So it's same flavor, different temperature, different characters, but Jon Favreau really directed the hell out of this episode. It was a really a joy to watch.
Yeah, and then the other thing I really liked was when Mando and Cobb are going to try and defeat this. It's like a dragon or whatever.
A crate dragon, I think they call it. Yeah, which
giant.
Is another homage to the original Star Wars. We saw the skeleton of 3PCO coming to that creature, so we now see it in the flesh, the first one. So, again, homage to the classics.
Yeah, of course. No, yeah, the that's the thing. I think if watching this episode, you really get a sense of how much Jon Favreau loves the original trilogy, and not in a really like, you know, superficial way.
Right,
It's just like
right.
he's incorporating things that make sense. One of those things that I loved was how he handled the Tusken Raiders, the Sand People.
Yeah.
This is the most the Sand
Humanized them,
People.
right?
Yeah, dude, this is the most the Sand People have ever gotten, like development wise. Like,
Yeah.
it was a really interesting look. Like, we saw, you know, we always look at them and they're like, oh, they're these monsters, these raiders. They come into villages and they kill people and then they steal and they
beat
go out.
Luke Skywalker unconscious in the first Star Wars. I mean, they're gangsters,
Right,
man.
and they are technically, you could look at it this way, they are technically the reason why the Empire comes to power, because they kill Anakin Skywalker's mother.
Very true.
So it's like they're these
Very true.
just people who have a really negative connotation.
Yeah.
However, in this episode, we learn that, you know, they fight with honor. They just have a certain way of life, and they've been on these lands, I think, as the Mandalorian says, just for you know, eons and eons amount of time. And so I just really liked, you know, the way that he handled you know, working with them. He was a very, like, you know, nonpartisan sort of guy in there, and he was able to sort of like bridge the gap between this village who has clearly been like you know, harassed by them repeatedly, and then the Sand People who are, you know, they've always been viewed one-dimensionally. And I thought this really brought some interesting sort of just like and it painted them in an interesting light, to the point where I was just like, okay, maybe they're not evil, maybe they're just a little misunderstood. It's a different way of life, different culture. And by the time, like, you know, Timothy Olyphant sort of like comes around on that and has like worked with them and everything, I feel like, you know, it brings about a new era of just like change between the Tusken Raiders and these people. It's very traditional, you know, sort of like small town Western, you know, small Western town interacting with you know Native Americans back in the day and stuff like that.
So a greater enemy, bigger enemy.
Yeah, exactly. And so I really appreciated that part of it.
It goes back to the idea of even larger conversation about what television can do versus what a movie can't do, which is if you explore the Tusken people in a Star Wars film, it's a 4.5 hour movie because you have to explore the depths of these characters. So that's the benefit of a television series, is you get to learn about these characters that we saw in the movies. Like, those are interesting characters. They seem, like you said, very one-dimensional, but man, it wouldn't be cool to get them in a TV show to explore a little bit of backstory. And we get that. And I think that's the beauty of what we're getting with the Star Wars universe, is learning these obscure characters, these characters that we had one thought process of, but then you get to meet them. And I think that's what we're going to get eventually when we get to talking about Boba Fett. We're going to learn how he survived the Sarlacc pit and what he's been doing this whole time, if that's even him to be, you know, him being a clone. So I just love that we get to, again, spend time in the universe and meet these characters that we only met briefly in the films, but now we get to explore their backstory more.
Yeah, I do want to ask you, you know, regarding the Tuskens and stuff like that. So obviously, I think that before Solo, people usually just assumed that, you know, two different races could correspond because everyone sort of has a general understanding of like basic, just like the basic language. Right. Solo came out and we saw Han Solo speaking specifically in Wookiee, and it was one of the things that I actually really hated about that, because I was like, that's kind of ridiculous. In this, we get Mando speaking in Tusken, and I didn't like it at first, but it did sort of grow on me. How did you sort of feel about that?
So if I'm not mistaken, he did something of this similar nature last season, where he came across, I can't remember the species, but he was able to speak their tongue. And I think that just goes back to Mando being an outcaster and not being of natural breed of a Mandalorian, just coming about of that kind of almost kind of Han Solo-ish character where he can pick up on things and learn the natives. And he's been across thousands of different galaxies on his journeys of bounty hunting. So I think it's just one of those scenarios where he just picked up on the tongue. He probably, you know, had to, one of his scouting missions picked up on their language and their mannerisms, stuff like that. So it was just, to me, like, again, just Mando pulling out some surprises of this, more layers to the character, of just knowing things about him and adding more dimensions to him.
Yeah, but like, I guess just like
Yeah.
more of the concept in general. Do you like the idea that people have to speak that specific language, or do you just sort of like think that it, in the case of the Tusken Raiders, where it just it's just them sort of like making noises. It could kind of come across a little silly. I think, in the context of this, I think it works a little bit better because he has the mask and you can't see it.
Right.
But like that concept in general, I'm still a little unsure of how I feel about it.
It is a good question. I mean, it is a matter of, so the language is not only spoken, but it's also hand gesturing,
Right.
and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I think it is a matter of I was okay with it because, again, I think it's just a matter of Mando being such a skilled warrior and a Mandalorian that he's able to adapt and pick up on things much easier than like Timothy Olyphant. He didn't know what they were saying, right? He probably come across a bunch of Sandmen, but never took the time to study them and learn them. And again, to me, it just goes into the fact that Mando is so skilled and so, cerebral in the sense that he can adapt to different creatures and monsters. And again, just picking up on the way that they speak and communicate.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back a little bit and go back to this opening real quick because I loved the opening.
The opening was so great.
Right? So, oh my God. And as much as I loved the pre-title card sequence of season 1, I think they outdid it with this one. Similar sort of thing where it's like he's on a mission, he's trying to get information out of someone before he goes somewhere. Yeah. But like, this just it showed how badass of a warrior Mando is here. And so he's obviously going to this like sort of like underground arena or whatever to go question Gor Koresh about the location of another Mandalorian and stuff like that. And I don't know if you've ever played the game, but back in like the early 2000s for PlayStation 2, there was a game called Star Wars Bounty Hunter. Where you played as Jango Fett for the whole time. And this, okay, first of all, highly recommend. It is so good, especially just because I love Jango Fett as a character. But this to me was really reminiscent of like the sort of like opening of Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the video game, because I mean, they both start off in some sort of arena battle, and then shit sort of hits the fan, and like you get to see like the Mandalorian in both cases just like really utilize their skill set and like, track down the guy and get the information and everything. That was so cool. And like the little shots we get of Baby Yoda in like the little pod. It's just,
he knows. Yeah, he's like, it's time for me to go ahead and take a little time out while Mando takes care of business. I love that chemistry that they've developed so far in the 2 seasons.
Yeah, this is the other thing that I was really afraid of. The Baby Yoda hype is real. Everyone loves Baby Yoda. I was afraid that they were going to
every 5 seconds,
yes,
boom, baby,
oversaturate everything and like make jokes and have him do like weird reactions. And they did it the perfect amount. They know how to use this character. They know that he's like. They need to use him more like they use like an R2-D2 or a BB-8. They're the special seasoning that you put over like a really good dish. So and I'm really happy that they didn't just go full on in on just like Baby Yoda here.
You hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, he was either, hiding in his crib or, we saw him in the kind of hiding when the Crete or the dragon came out. He didn't use his Jedi Master powers. It was very sparingly used, but used effectively. Again, it's a cute baby. It sells toys. We get those reactions from him, but they didn't throw it down the throat like, hey, more Baby Yoda, more toys to sell. It was used very well. I think Jon Favreau, again, just knowing the temperature of how to use these characters and knowing these characters in and out. So I thought he was used very well in this episode for sure.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And then I guess the other thing that I really liked about the opening, other than like, Ludwig's score, which is, dude,
he's serious. Becoming, dude, like literally, like seriously, man, he's becoming one of my favorite composers working today. And I mean, coming off of Tenet and obviously the first season of The Mandalorian and, whether it be Creed, this guy just has that, whatever that magic is, man. It's just, you feel immersed in his world when you hear that score kick in, man. I love it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so obviously Mando like kills all the guards, really amazing way. And then he takes Gor Koresh out to the alley and he hangs him over the lamppost.
Very Batman-ish.
Like, okay. So this is literally where I was going. I was like, this entire opening felt like Batman. I was like, Mando is basically Batman in
I'm
this
not going to
opening.
kill you by my own hands. He did.
He's like,
He
but I
kept
don't
the
have to
word.
save you. And then he
Exactly.
just
I
lets
love it.
the little like fucking
Dog
creatures.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and he's walking away, and then the theme comes up with the title card. I was like, "Oh my god, this is
Great
so
opening,
good."
dude. I can
Yeah.
So thinking of last season, I believe Dave Filoni directed the first premiere episode, and we have Mando going to the bar and looking for the guy. That opening was fine. The jokes didn't really land for me. I just love, like you just mentioned, how serious it was in regards to Mando just kicking ass. He has all his armor now. He's suited up, ready to go. And I just love the serious nature that he is now. He's on a mission. He's on his mission now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any jokes, which are fun, but it was just, we got the baby Yoda closing his crate. But I love the opening. It was just like almost, again, Batman kind of Bondish opening to just a great way to set up the episode for sure.
That's the thing. There wasn't a lot of forced humor in this, and
No.
sometimes, and I guess that's the one thing that I can say about the Mandalorian as a whole that I really like is, given the Disney brand, the Lucasfilm, the Marvel, like
Right.
all that stuff like that, there's a tendency to put misplaced humor in there to create levity to make it more accessible.
Right,
The humor
right.
in this series is so natural, and it's more just situational or just quick reactions, nothing like too crazy, not like one-liners or whatever.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it for that. So that was the one I was really happy about. The other thing that I do want to bring up is, well, I love Dave Filoni, and I think he is a creative genius who, like, him along with Jon Favreau should be just like, making the play calls in terms of what to do with Star Wars.
Agreed.
I do think that his inexperience as a live action director hindered some of those episodes that he did in the first season.
Yeah.
This one, we get Jon Favreau, who is a seasoned director, and I think you can immediately tell that this is someone who understands the cinematic language. There were like several shots in here that really reminded me of his work on Iron Man, specifically Iron Man 1. So like there's obviously the one in the flashback where Cobb uses the Boba Fett rocket, that was a great fan moment for people to see. He uses the Boba Fett rocket to blow up the miners, and the way the way it's framed,
Iron
really,
Man.
Exactly.
Iraq.
Yeah, like the way it's framed when he shoots the rocket and it blows them up. It reminded me of when Iron Man blew up the tank in that first film. Obviously, Cobb isn't. Obviously, Cobb isn't walking away, but it was just like it was a really cool sort of moment. And so like I loved seeing Favreau go back into like some of those. Just put in some of those more directorial flourishes that we saw from like some of his work on the Iron Man films.
Yeah. No, 100% agree, man. I think you just meant, Jon Favreau getting behind the camera. He's been waiting for this. The whole first season, wins Emmys. He has some great people getting in behind the camera. But this was his moment. And I don't know if he's going to direct any more episodes this season. I know he's going to probably gear up for season 3, but I think that it was just like he's been waiting so long to finally tell his story. He's loved this. He's brought this Mandalorian to the table. This is his baby, him and Dave Filoni, and we saw him finally shine, man. And going off of the idea of different directors each episode moving forward, this is such a great template and way to kind of open the season for more of this type of vibe. And he sets the tone for this season. And I thought he did a hell of a job once again. Kudos to Jon Favreau and directing this episode, man.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we should talk about the confrontation that sort of happens. So like the Tusken Raiders team up with the villagers, and we get this like great little montage sequence, and they're like prepping to kill the dragon and all that stuff at the mouth of the Sarlacc pit. Which that's the interesting thing, is that we kind of learn in just terms of mythology that entrance to the cave there is the entrance to where the Sarlacc monster lived, and the monster lived there until this dragon ate it. So that was really interesting, just to sort of like get some more insight into just like the Sarlacc monster in general and everything. Right. And so I really loved the whole like setup of that, and then like them working together and then fighting the dragon and everything, and then obviously like Mando using his wit to basically
Pinocchio, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, Pinocchio, for lack of a better. Which I think that I know a little all over the place here, but that to me, it was basically just a really subtle explanation of how Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc pit, because of the armor and because of just I guess like whatever utilities he sort of had on him.
Any of your resources to get out of the situation. That's the Mandalorian.
Exactly.
This is the way.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but no, that whole thing was really good. It kind of reminded me of just like a mini episode of Dune with like the sandworms and everything.
Not only did Dune come to mind, but also, and I just happened to watch this like literally like the other night. Steven Spielberg Jaws. It reminded me so much of Jaws of like with the having them come up with the idea of using the bombs to blow up the creature, and obviously that kind of was and how they wrangled Jaws together. It reminisces of that a lot. So again, it just goes to show you the filmography and the knowledge and just the cinematic approach that Jon Favreau, being a student of the game, implements these homages to these great things that we love.
And dude, here's the other thing. I thought that the way they showed Mando and Cobb sort of like using the jetpacks and fighting all stuff like that in this episode was incredible.
So
the way that they showed it in season 1, I was a little hesitant about. I was like, this looks kind of fake and just weird, when all the Mandalorians start showing up and everything. This one, it was just like, okay, this is you can tell that someone like Jon Favreau is like directing this, because I just feel like his work on Iron Man sort of prepped him for the suit usage in this. The other thing I liked was when Mando slapped Cobb's backpack, and then he like started flying all over the place. It was a nice little like sort of like homage back to Boba Fett, obviously falling into the Sarlacc pit and everything. But then they kill the dragon, and they save the day. Town's all good, and then they start riding off with the armor, which I was really happy to see that Cobb was like, he was a man of his word. Yeah, exactly. It's like usually when you get into these situations, especially when you're dealing with outlaws and everything, it's like you don't know, like maybe they're gonna pull a gun and turn on you and just say, nah, you whatever.
I can't think of the character's name from episode 5 who I hated. Hey Mando, that kid that followed him around. Like you would expect maybe a double cross, or like we saw in the very beginning of the episode, with Gar turning on him. You would have thought that was the play, but no, Timothy Olyphant, like I said, Cobb is an honorable man. He kept his word. So that's what, again, I hope we get more of him, which like you said, I think we will, but it was nice to see that kind of character moment for him.
Right, for sure. And then a little bit out of order here, but we should mention the fact that his speeder was Anakin Skywalker's pod racer. That was really
modified,
cool.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a really just like interesting concept, like using one of the sides of the pod racer to like power a speeder bike. Like that's well done, Favreau. Well done.
Yet again, not just showing appreciation to the OG Star Wars, but showing some appreciation to the prequels as well. Again, even with the mixed bag of prequels, it's part of the universe, it's part of the lore. And I love that Jon Favreau has taken these different things from the different parts of the universe and implemented it. And even going back to that fight with the dragon, man, how cinematic was that? How talk about the budget and how this looks. Talking about movie theaters, can you imagine watching that? Because it looked like it was almost an IMAX, if I'm not mistaken. But that whole sequence was just beautifully placed. Yeah,
the changing the aspect ratio. I was like, that's smart. That's very. That was very. Just Western-ish, for lack of a better phrase. So I really agree with you. I enjoyed that. It was an incredibly well shot episode. There were some great vista shots, especially with just like him on the speeder, sort of just like flying across the sand and everything with the sun going down. I was like, this is just. Maybe we need Jon Favreau to direct like every episode of this series. That's what
Hey man, he's just going to show he's flexing his muscle. Like, hey. This universe is in good hands, guys. So hopefully, again, we get more of him in this season, and who knows? Maybe this is Jon Favreau just flexes his muscle for his inevitably Star Wars movie that I think we're going to get some down the line after he directs the next. Well, not Lion King 2, but he's a busy man, so hopefully we'll get more of Jon Favreau in this universe.
Right. Okay, so then we get to the end of the episode, and then obviously we get the reveal. Boba Fett, who here's the funny thing. When they revealed him, I was like, oh, he looks like Dave Bautista from Dune. And I was like, that paired with the sandworms is just giving me big Dune vibes. But yeah, Boba's back. He's alive.
Back, man. I mean, we saw his boot, I assume, in the end of episode 5. We assume that he was when the character died in episode 5, that was his silhouette that was there, and we get the confirmation, man. So I mean, theories, predictions for the weeks ahead, I hope that they work together, but we know they're going to probably clash heads when they first meet each other, right?
Right. Well, he's probably going to want to get his armor back or whatever.
Yeah.
So well, here's the interesting thing, because Tamora Morrison, obviously, who played Jango Fett, he's now playing Boba Fett, and he's technically, he's the look and voice of the clones too in the live action world. People are speculating, oh, does this mean that we might get Rex in this season as well? And for me personally, I definitely would rather see Rex over Boba Fett, but I just wonder if it's going to be a case where we get both characters, or are they not even going to bother with Rex, leave him to the animated side of things, and then just give us Boba Fett? And also, how much of Boba Fett are we going to get? Is it just going to be like a little entanglement and then he's gone, or is he's going to actually become like an integral part of the series? I think it's just, there's a lot of questions that sort of arise when you bring in the character, because I don't want to, I mean, to be honest, I don't want to see too much of him. I've always thought the mystery surrounding the character was more interesting than him as like a character himself. But, at the same time, I think something that they could explore is the fact that he's not a real Mandalorian. He's a clone, and he's never really lived up to the potential of the Mandalorians. Like, we've seen him in the Clone Wars series. He's a skilled fighter and everything. He's handy in a pinch, but then he dies in one of the most laughable ways possible, which I think is definitely done on purpose. As everyone's like, oh, that armor is so cool, and he just ends up being such a minimal threat. So I think that there is something interesting to explore there. I just wonder how many episodes are we going to get with him?
It's a great question, because I think this season more than anything will be a audition of sorts for many characters to get spinoffs, whether that be Cara Dune, whether that be a la when we get Ahsoka Tano. I think Boba Fett's appearance will be, kind of in and out of the season, and potentially spinning off to, I don't know. I don't think they're going to give him his own series, because we know that he was supposed to get his movie with Josh Trank. So I don't know if it's a way of collaborating with him with another story, or again, whatever that movie was going to be 4 or 5 years ago, he gets his own series. So I think this season will be more of a setup for these spinoff characters to see how people are accepting of these characters. Do they want to see the Rex storyline? Do they want to see Boba Fett storyline? So I think this kind of opens the door, checking the temperature. How do people like the return of him? How is it handled? And if it's a success, more seasons of spinoff characters to come.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I want to see a Boba Fett series, but if they made him like a recurring side character in the Mandalorian or something like that, I'm okay with that. I just don't want him to become like to overshadow what's going on.
It makes me even think too, I wonder if they will be, whatever that script was for Josh Trank's film, if they're going to implement that in this season in some way, of taking whatever the outlines of that was and put it into the series, this season.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking maybe if they're gonna continue to explore him as a character, they'll probably take pieces of that, take the heart of that, try and sprinkle it into his arc in this series. But if like I said at the beginning, if I'm being honest, I would rather see them just sort of explore Rex, because I think it's basically the same sort of thing where it's like both Rex and Boba are clones, and they are not Mandalorians. One was sort of loosely raised on the idea of what a Mandalorian is, even though Jango is basically like excommunicated, so even he's he's a former Mandalorian, he's not a full one. Rex is someone who is just like, he was sort of like defined by the war, and he was a soldier, and he doesn't really have any attachment to his ancestry per se. So you bring in Mando, and I feel like that just sort of like again, similar to Boba Fett, that opens up a whole new sort of like realm of possibilities for things to explore, especially with a character like who's definitely towards the end of his life, because obviously we see in Return of the Jedi, he is the guy with the white beard and everything. So I don't know, I feel like if they're gonna tackle like something along those lines, I would rather see it done with Rex probably more than I'd like to see it with Boba. But it definitely looks like we're going to be going the more of the Boba route for sure.
Which again just brings up the spark in the conversation of just so much excitement around this series of what's to come next, what avenue will it take. It's not it's going to probably surprise us all. So again, just goes to the fact that we're in for a really good season 2, man.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, before we give you our closing thoughts here, be sure to jump down in the comments section and let us know what you thought of The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, Chapter 9, titled The Marshal. So many different numbers and titles and all that wild, wacky stuff. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you want to see more of? And then also, when it comes to Boba Fett, how do you want them to handle the character? I mean, we've all been speculating, like, oh, he's going to be in the series ever since we knew that Tamora Morrison was announced. But now that we've seen him, how do you think that's going to sort of like clash with Mando and everything? Let us know down in the comments section below. Before we do close out, I do want to bring up one certain thing so I feel like this season as a whole has a more clear direction. It doesn't feel like they're wandering around aimlessly, which is what I kind of struggled with in season 1. This one, from the get-go, we know the mission, we know what he's going to go.
People. Yeah,
exactly. So, when he gets to the village and he takes the armor from Cobb, where do you think he's going to go next? Is it just going to be like another, the adventures of Baby Yoda and Mando, or is it like he has something else in mind? Does he come across Boba Fett or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were to play off of how the episode ended and continue that that ongoing story, maybe he has that confirmation as he's leaving Tatooine. That's where Boba Fett is maybe on his ship. They have, you're going to give me my armor or whatever the case may be, and they have their conflict there. So it could go that route, or it could be we're on the next mission, we're on the next path of figuring out how to get the child to his people. So if I were to pick one, I would actually like to see the continuation. Again, I know we talked about Boba Fett maybe not being as implemented into the season, but it would be nice to see once we end this episode, it shows the continuation of how Boba Fett's okay, there is my armor. That's the target. That's the bounty. Or again, he is a bounty hunter. Technically, this could be his way back into the guild. There's a bounty on that child's head, so maybe he goes after the child, and maybe that's where the story picks up. Where he's Mandalorian's outwitted by Boba Fett, and he now has a child, and now we got to go after Boba Fett and get the child back. So maybe that's something to explore for further episodes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, overall, sort of just closing thoughts on the episode.
Fantastic, man. From the beginning of that opening scene that we talked about to the world building to getting us into familiar area, Tatooine, but knowing this smaller area, how it was abandoned, how it's been kind of protected by this by this Marshal Cobb, and then just seeing the cinematic nature of the episode. The score was there. The direction was fantastic. And it just really gets me excited for the rest of the season because, again, we still have our characters of Cara Dune, Ahsoka Tano making an appearance, who is Sasha Banks' parent. We know the Jedis are going to make an appearance in this season. So I think this is just going to be, this was a great premiere episode to kick off what I hope to be a fantastic season of The Mandalorian. Yeah,
I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of just all the lore and everything and characters, both new and old, that we're going to get into. And so what a great way to sort of like ease us into that adventure. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think I told you off camera before we started, I think this might be my favorite episode of the series. And I really liked what Taika Waititi did with the finale of last season. But this, to me, it just, if you were to boil down the essence of what The Mandalorian is into a single episode, it feels like this is that episode. It's a Western. It's sort of like the wandering drifter outlaw, coming into a situation. He has his own goal in mind and he needs to help these people out in order to get one step closer to achieving that goal. We get some lore, some backstory, some great action set pieces, great cinematography, amazing music, just a really well-structured and paced episode. So, I know, like for me, I was just like, this is sort of like what I wanted.
This is what you wanted,
all along. And I really, and again, I really do think the length sort of played into it. It allowed more development. It allowed the vision to become clearer. And so, I loved every bit of it. I think the only thing that I will say that was a bit of a negative was that I think, when when he goes into town and he's like interrogating certain people, or he's talking to the ship lady at the beginning from season 1.
Oh yeah.
Well, first of all, I hate her. Yeah,
Patty Motto or whatever. Yeah, that's like she's in a wrong show. She's in a kid's show and an animated kid's show. That character still hasn't worked for me. It was cool seeing her return from a season 1 character, but her sense of comedy is just not my taste.
It's not good. She was the only one who made like the obvious Baby Yoda jokes, and I was like, all right, I'm out. Give me less of that. No, but
right.
You know, when Mando was sort of like interacting with them, it did feel sort of like a video game, like a chapter of a video game. You know, that's not a slight against that. I think like that just sort of like comes with the episodic nature of what they're trying to do, if that is what they're doing here. But it was just like, you know, some of the questions that they were asking, the way they were set up, I was like, oh, okay, this does sort of feel like, you know, this is Mandalorian, the video game. But a lot of that does go away once you get into like the stuff with the sand people and everything. So I listen, very, very minor nitpick on an otherwise phenomenal season 2 premiere. But guys, that's going to do it for our review and recap of The Mandalorian season 2 episode 1. Thank you all for tuning in, either, you know, live or on the replay. Again, be sure to look for these every Friday. We're going to be talking about new episodes of The Mandalorian on a weekly basis, and we'd love to have you join us. Thank you so much, Elliott, for joining me on this. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, man, thank you for having me on, and I'm so excited to break down this season with you, man, week by week. But yeah, guys, you can find me here on YouTube at Movie Files, as well as on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Files and at Movie Files Live, and check me out.
Yeah, for sure. Go give him a sub and all that good stuff. The man consistently does great things over there. So, but guys, lastly, if you haven't done so already, be sure to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for, again, like I said, weekly Mandalorian recaps. We're going to be breaking down his Dark Materials really soon. So more television coverage coming your way shortly. And then also, I've got a couple of really good too, I guess you could say, really cool video essays. I've already put out one for Sleepy Hollow, and then I've got one coming out for Temple of Doom. So a lot of amazing content here on the FilmSpeak channel. So if you are new, be sure to stick around and give us a subscribe. It would be great. You can also like FilmSpeak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, just search FilmSpeak. And if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, thanks so much for tuning into this recap, and we will catch you back here next week. Take care.